Welcome to the offseason here in the Montreal Expos franchise. In Season 1, we went 61-101, finishing dead last in the NL East. We finished with the third worst record in baseball, just ahead of the Rockies and the Athletics. The World Series ends up being the Texas Rangers and the Atlanta Braves. The Braves end up going from division winners all the way to the championship, and now they are in game number 7 in the World Series. This is every kid's dream. Atlanta goes up 2-0, but late in the 7th, the Texas Rangers tie it up and then add 2 more in the 8th and go on to win the World Series for back-to-back years in a row. And Carter ends up winning the MVP of the World Series. Jorge Soler ends up winning the NL MVP. Christian Yelich does finish second. I was hoping that he would get one, but he does win the batting title, hitting .335. Ronald Acuna is right behind him at .319. But I'm just going to quickly go through the awards before getting into the offseason. But we have a lot of work to do here in the offseason and building this team. At least we know a couple of players that will be pieces in this rebuild, but like a lot of you alluded to, we don't really know who this is going to be built around at this point in the rebuild. And I think that's going to be our goal going into this offseason and the next one, because hopefully we will have a better draft pick come next draft, as we had the third highest odds. So we do change up the uniforms a little bit. We go to the grays at home, which is actually the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be having whites at home, and then we add the Nike swoosh to the away jerseys. So every year we will switch those up and get a different, combination of uniforms. So heading into the offseason, first up is our exclusive rights free agents. And Kyle Higashioka is wanting like a 1 year, about $2.53 million deal. And right now, I don't know what the catcher market is going to look like. So we're going to let him just be in free agency and then offer him a contract. But Colton Wong, I do want to sign before he hits free agency. I think he was very, very valuable. He led our team in average with 286. So I want him to at least be a mentor in the infield. And eventually we're going to have to, move some young guys up. But right now, we don't know who those are going to be. And then we decided to offer Tim Anderson a contract. Now, that was down from $5 million. He gets a 1 year, $2.8 million. So he's going to take a pay cut if he accepts that. And then Buck Farmer, we decided to offer him initial 2 year, $5.1 million. And then we up it to a 2 year, $6 million. And he agrees to that. And that's how we start free agency. And we have it's going to be about like $60 million, a little over $60 million to spend. So we do have a couple of minor league players that are making a lot of money. We're still going to leave that. That was just how the series started. But a guy like Luke Schilling, who's making $1.3 million, I'm just going to cut him. I don't know how that happened, but here are our biggest off-season needs. So we will quickly go through this real quick. What we really need is starters. We need starters, and we don't really have that in our rotation. So a middle tier A starting pitcher, $10 to $15 million I'm looking to spend there. A starting right fielder with Jason Hayward hitting free agency. More starting pitching depth. We just need it. High OPS hitters. This is something that we absolutely struggle with. We were 29th in OPS in the league last year. Figuring out our infield stars in depth, we offered Tim Anderson a contract. We still have Barger, who we traded for, and we moved Zach McKinstry to the middle infield officially. So he is now listed as a second baseman. Maybe he's our starter, maybe he's not. He hit around 250, 260 last year. He hit 257, 334 on base percentage. I do want to give him a chance, but maybe there's something we can get better in the middle infield. Who knows? And then there's Lamont Wade, who's due about $4 million in arbitration. And to me, he's just not worth it. If I'm paying Tim Anderson 2.8 and paying Lamont Wade $4 million, I'm just going to release Lamont Wade and allow him to hit free agency and sign elsewhere. So here we go. Free agency is officially underway. as Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, Gleyber Torres, Pete Alonso, Christian Walker, Alex Bregman, Tanner Scott, Willie Adames, Paul Goldschmidt, and Shane Bieber and Max Fried all lead this free agency class. To me, this is a top-heavy class with a couple of elite players like Soto and Corbin Burns and those guys. And the middle of the pack is kind of, up and down. Like a lot of these players that hit free agency had very weird seasons. Either like they had really great seasons out of nowhere or had just like pretty below average seasons, even though their ratings say that they are really good players. But as you can see, going through position by position, we're going to have a good pick of who we want to have on our roster next year with $60 million to spend. It's a little over that. It's about $65 million. So we'll see what happens here as we start out with our number one need. And we said it before, it's starting pitching. And one guy that really catches my eye, and I'm not going to go and break the bank spending $30 million on a starting pitcher or $20 million. It's got to be between 10 to 15. I like John Means. He's a guy in MLB The Show that pitches really well. In 2022 and 23, obviously he was injured, so he did not have a good sample size. But here last year, he was fully healthy, 20 quality starts, a 2.58 ERA, a 106 whip, and I think that he's going to be a piece that we can have as a building block for this rotation. So he's looking for $8.3 million a year. We will offer him a little over that. So it will be between 8 and 9. So it'll be like 8.5 just about. And we will offer that contract for a 3-year offer. Another guy that's intriguing is Walker Buehler. But here's the thing with Buehler. Last year, he did not play. The year before that, he had kind of a down year in 2022. In 2021, he was great. I mean, if you get that Walker Buehler, you are in there along with 2020. But it's just been like up and down. And even when facing him, I mean, we hit him really well. And that scares me because if you have a below average season and then you hit free agency, who knows if somebody takes a risk on you, especially in your late 20s, early 30s, what version you're going to get. And I just don't want to take that risk of offering him a long-term contract because that's what we're going to have to give him in order for him to sign with us. So I decided to pass on Walker Buehler. Nick Pivetta was interesting too. He's from Canada, so coming to a Canadian team would have been interesting. So I looked to see what he wants, but he's wanting like over $10 million. So, he's looking for a long-term contract, but if we give him a short-term contract, he's looking for $10.5 million. And I'm not looking to give him a 5-year contract that will put him below that $10 million threshold. So I decided to go back to Matthew Boyd. I talked about him a little bit last season. Obviously, he was in the rotation last year and pitched actually pretty decently. And for a guy that's a veteran, I liked him in the rotation. He was not bad at all. So I decided to offer him that 1-year safe $5 million contract for the safe offer. And I decided not to take any big risk and give anybody big contract as far as years, because I just don't want to be handicapped to a long-term deal in our rotation. We have young guys coming up. So why even take that risk? Why not just develop the young players? So going over to relief pitching, we do need a couple of bullpen arms. And to me, I think Miguel Castro kind of fits what we need. We need a guy that we can go to besides Elvis Peguero. Like Elvis Peguero was the guy that we went to in a lot of tough situations. We need somebody else we can go to in tough situations. So I don't want to just use Peguero, and obviously that hurts his stats as well. But we go over to catcher. And catcher is an interesting position. Elias Diaz is here. He has hit much better than Higashioka, but I decide to give Higgy a contract offer here, and he's asking for 3.4. I think that's very, very reasonable, but I will give him kind of not a hometown discount. What's the opposite of that? We give him a little more than what he's asking for a 1-year contract. I do think he needs to prove it a little bit more. He was our only all-star, but he only hit about 220, 230. So that's definitely got to be better. So going over to the other position players, I look at everybody on the open market. I look at Juan Soto. I look at Pete Alonso. But we just need a guy. And one of the biggest needs was OPS. And I look at Christian Walker a little deeper. He's 34 years old, 89 overall. But if you look at his attributes, he doesn't look to be declining at all. And even if he was at this point, he's going to decline slow because he has a potential. I look at his numbers in Arizona, and he's been about a career 260, 250, high 250s hitter. But this year, he was amazing. He even stole 23 bases, and he's had 3 straight years of hitting 30 home runs. He had an OPS that was a career high at 926. He hit 300 on the year, on base percentage at 386. He just looks like a guy that could be a potential guy that we can build around in this initial part of the rebuild. And I think that Christian Walker has his best years ahead of him still. He had a 6.5 WAR. His runs created was 121. And just for reference, the highest on our team was only 75, and that was Tim Anderson. This guy gives us an instant impact bat in the lineup. And I decide to offer him a 4-year, $60 million deal with the player option on the end. He will probably surely take that. And we will offer Christian Walker the biggest contract we will offer here in the offseason. He's asking for 12.8. We will actually offer him a little more than that. So we'll see if he does accept that contract, but I think those are the initial offers here in the first phase, as Christian Walker and John Means will be the veterans coming in and hopefully will help us perform a lot better than what we performed in season 1. And I can't wait to see if they will accept it. So going into phase 2, I really look at outfield. And outfield is something that's interesting because Dairon Blanco is going on age 31. He's a good outfielder because of his speed, but is he the future at center field? I'm not sure. Left field, we have Akil Baddoo. It still remains to be seen out there. But right field is the biggest hole. Jason Hayward walked in free agency. Stone Garrett is sitting here in free agency, and unfortunately, due to the expansion draft, he just sat there. But looking at him, he looks pretty good, but he's 29. He has a decent arm. He has good power versus left, but his vision is very low. I'm kind of concerned that if we do sign him to a contract, would he be just a high strikeout guy? I need a guy that's going to be hitting for high OPS. Like we said, that's like one of our biggest needs right now. And our team batting average was 30th in the league. So we need guys that can hit for average and that are pretty much a lock. So I decided a different strategy here. I decide to go after 2 outfielders, and the first is going to be Travis Jankowski, only a 1-year, $3 million deal, but I want to platoon him with another outfielder. And Connor Joe is interesting because he hits very, very well versus left. And when he did platoon last year for the Pittsburgh Pirates, he hit 284, slugged 459, had an OPS of 830. Those are the type of players that we're looking for. And he's also got a pretty good outfield arm. He's good defensively, has decent speed at 50. He's not like super slow, and he's good discipline at the plate, 75 discipline. So I'm hoping that, these 2 guys, we offer them literally the same contract, could, platoon and turn out to be something. We'll see. I think we still need to find our outfielders of the future. We don't really know who those guys are going to be, so I think that's a pretty safe move. But going over to, catcher, back to catcher, I should say, Riley Adams is hanging out here, and I just want to give him a chance. And he's not going to be a guy that's likely going to start, but who knows what the catcher position is going to look like. Higashioka is 35 years old. If I get a guy that's a little younger, and Riley Adams, he's 28, why not? We move on in free agency, and we find out Christian Walker has signed his papers. He is now a Montreal Expo. 4 years, $15 million. I don't even think that's a super expensive contract for Christian Walker, especially coming off of the season that he had. and it's going to be quite the joy playing with him. He's going to be our starting first baseman. He is an excellent fielder, but down the road, if we have a better fielding first baseman, he could be a DH. We also find out that Jankowski signs his contract, Miguel Castro signs his contract, John Means signs his contract, and we signed a couple of minor league guys as well who we will go over a little later. Tim Anderson ends up signing, so he signs that reduced contract for $2.8 million. So that is a very good sign, and so does Colton Wong as well. Juan Soto goes to the Athletics. This was the surprise of the offseason. Now, these numbers are probably way less than what they'll be in real life. Juan Soto is going to get a major deal, probably a lot more than that, but it is a video game. Just remember that. But he goes over to the Athletics. Tanner Scott goes to the Braves on a 5-year $20. Corbin Burns goes to the Astros. He'll probably get way more than that in real life as well. I don't know what's up with those numbers, to be honest with you. Max Fried goes to the Guardians. 3-year deal to Cleveland at age 31. He's going to possibly help them win a division there. Alex Bregman goes to the Cardinals. Now, this is a surprise because they obviously have Nolan Arenado. Where is Bregman going to play? Shane Bieber, $19 million to the Rockies. So the Rockies and the Oakland Athletics, maybe the Vegas Athletics, get 2 big contracts, 2 guys. So now all of us have a big contract that we are handing off to a next player that will bring us past our rebuilds. We end up going to the draft lottery. We had the 3rd highest odds to get the number 1 pick, and we end up there at number 3. So it's just how the ending standings finished. Athletics 1, Rockies 2, and Expos 3. So that's a good sign. We have a top 3 draft pick. So we go into the Rule 5 draft, and I made sure to have a roster spot open to possibly select somebody here. Chris Bubich was a guy I knew was going to hit the Rule 5 draft, and I was likely going to go after him, so I'm disappointed that he does go number 2. So now we have a choice here of who to select, and I think I look at our starting pitching. I like John Means here at the top. Jamal Watson's going to have his shot as well. Javier Assad had a very down year, so I'm not sure about him. We have German Marquez, and then we also have Alexander Santiago. So we have 5 guys there, along with Xavier Curry, who can compete for the starting rotation. But I'm thinking if there is a starting pitcher here, we could go after them and add some more competition, but I didn't see anybody that was worth it. I go over to a position player. Terran Vavra is here, but he has limited experience at the MLB level, and I want to make sure I get a guy that can contribute and contribute well. And I don't think that Vavra is worth the draft pick here, but he does have a little MLB experience, not a whole lot. So I go to closing pitching, and I look at Dwayne Underwood. He is 30 years old, 73 overall, C potential. He did not play at the MLB level last year, but he has had that experience. He's about a 6-year vet. So I'm thinking that he looks like the most likely draft pick here. I look at the top 2 closers, and it looks like Underwood is a bit better. So I decide to go with a 30-year-old and draft him here with our only Rule 5 draft pick. I made sure to have 1 roster spot open so that I only have 1 of those guys. I don't want to be handicapped by a guy that's got to be at the major league level the entire season. So here's what the roster looks like after those waves of free agency. I like our starting pitchers. Like, there is going to be a battle, and that's one thing that we did not have last year. We did not have depth where if we have injury, we can move a guy up, move a guy down, move him into the starting rotation. We now have that flexibility. Our bullpen didn't need to change much, but we did sign Castro and we added Dwayne Underwood. So we have, like I said, more competition there. At catcher, I wanted to add competition. Riley Adams does sign that contract, so now we have a more competitive catching room. At first base, we obviously know we have the young guys in Bill Hedger and Augustus Macklin, but we add a veteran and probably the star of the team in Christian Walker to a contract for the next 4 years. Our middle infield is still a little thin. We have Addison Barger, we have Tim Anderson, but Anderson's going to be moving over to third base full time because I like Barger better defensively at short. And then second base, we obviously have Colton Wong and McKinstry. In the outfield, I like what we did. We obviously didn't break the bank for anybody in right field, but we at least added 2 quality outfielders that can platoon, and who knows, maybe one of them does pop. I want to go back to the middle infield though. Addison Barger can play all around, but his bat really needs to prove itself. He hit .229 last year. I decided to give him some MLB at-bats because I wanted to see what he can do versus the pitching instead of opting to, develop him in the minors. And I think one thing I'm going to do is try to acquire another middle infielder because we had some guys we were playing at the MLB level last year like Jose Barrero and Jeter Downs. I think I'm going to move at least one of those guys down to the minors because I want to develop some guys that maybe are in their mid to late 20s but can use some minor league at-bats to further their skills. So I decide to look via trade instead of free agency, and I look to the Milwaukee Brewers. They have Sal Frelick, who moved to third base here going into 2024. Jaime Candelario, who is there. They ended up trading for him at the deadline last year. And then there's Andrew Monasterio. Monasterio is interesting. He has not performed well here in this series so far, but his attributes say he should be like a pretty decent player. Looking at his stats last year, he hit only .223 on base percentages below 300. So I'm guessing that this guy isn't going to demand a lot in trade. Well, one thing that they need is depth in the outfield. They don't really have that right now. They have a lot of guys that are, ready to play at the MLB level right now, but as far as the minors or fringe MLB players, they don't really have that. And one guy that really disappointed me last year was Lawrence Butler. He had spurts where he played well. He hit 13 home runs, but his strikeout percentage was 20.7%. He did not slug well. He does not get on base well. He's not a great defensive player. And the thing is, if you want to stick around, you have to be able to prove something, that you can do something well. So I decide to trade him for Monasterio. Monasterio gives us a good middle infielder. He comes in as a third baseman, but he is naturally a shortstop. So we decide to move his position over to shortstop, and he goes up in overall actually to a 72 overall. So now we have that camp battle in the middle infield. Monasterio and Addison Barger, they're going to battle it out for the starting shortstop job. So going into the spring training, I think one thing I wanted to look for, and I made a note of it in the draft, is finding some undrafted free agents. And we found a couple of them. Let's start with some of our under the radar signings who will get camp invites, or at least spring training invites. Richard Takatsu is an interesting pitcher. He is 65 overall. He is a bit older, but he's a guy that is going to get a chance to prove what he can do in the spring. I'm not saying I have high hopes for him, but we'll see what he does. Edgar Lopez was a guy that went undrafted, and he actually went into free agency. I was surprised to see him there, but he ends up being a 61 overall and see potential. Roger Calderon, another 4-year player in college, and he ends up being 22 years old, but he has a while to develop. I'm not sure he's going to turn into anything. But maybe the biggest gem I found was Milt Kaiser. He is an outfielder from UCLA. He went undrafted, and he looks really good. At 71 overall, he's got great contact, great clutch. His clutch is really good. His reaction in the outfield is pretty good. His arm leaves a little bit to be desired, but he's a guy that could potentially make an impact. And then lastly, there's Charles Benson, who was a strikeout closing pitcher. Now, he used to go to the University of Arkansas, but he comes in as probably one of the oldest undrafted free agents I've seen. But looking at him, he could be decent. It could just be a dud. Who knows? But that high strikeouts per 9, you got to take a chance on that. So that will do it in the off season. In next episode, we will highlight a lot of the spring training battles. I'm excited for that. I want to see what a lot of these new players can do, and if we'll need to make maybe another trade in the spring. Who knows? But let me know what you guys thought of this offseason and what you would grade it as. But I had a lot of fun. And obviously, I think the goal this year is to find the young guys who we are going to build around. Will it be Bill Hedger? Will it be Augustus Macklin? Well, at least we have a star, Christian Walker, who will put butts in the seats. Hit subscribe, hit that like button. We'll see you next episode. Stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.
I'm about my pledge. I'm decked up on blue bills, and I won't stop until the cash pit look like fall leaves in the backfield. Tell her out of my face if she coming with that bull. Quick to say my piece, I'm so after school special. She brainy, but them jeans looking like